cannot believe August is almost over.
Feels like August. Dog days, man.
It does.
Dog days.
But it's like the summer just blew by.
Yeah.
My daughter's back in school. I don't know where it went.
Where are we at with fire season? There was one fire. There was a little fire.
There have been some little ones. Yeah, fire season, they say, is year-round. You talk to the firemen there, it's year-round. In theory, it starts in July in Southern California.
Yeah.
When you're inland, Pasadena, the Valley, certainly Lancaster and Riverside, those kinds of areas, those areas will burn in July and August for sure.
Yeah.
Where I'm at, that's basically anywhere from the end of September to the beginning of December.
Yeah.
So
not out of the zone yet.
Not out of the zone yet. That's when the Santa Ana winds kick up.
Squeaking.
The Santa Ana winds really kick up. Starting the end of September, go all the way through October and November. And October and November are the deadly months. Sometimes they go into December, but by about mid-December, we're starting to get rain and winter's on its way. And
fingers crossed.
Yeah. So we're good for now, but the interesting news of late, some very interesting pieces have been running about the way producer deals are evaporating at the studios. They're all about the franchise. There's nothing left for producers to develop material. They don't want them bringing material in.
Yeah.
The studios have these development divisions who should have been doing the work all along, by the way. These producer deals proliferating as a phenomenon of the 80s. And
Sips and Bruckheimer.
All that stuff.
All those,
all that stuff. You used to be an exec with the studio. They lay you off, but they give you a producer deal.
Yeah.
And then you can bring stuff in, and they pay for an office and an overhead. Well, why'd you even fire me now you're paying more. You get it? You know what I'm saying? It's like you were paying me, say, $300,000-$400,000 and bonuses, and now you're paying me $5 million for overhead and acquisitions.
Plus, my company owns a piece of this movie now.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm sad to see a lot of them go, because it's where, if you're an independent, that's a writer or a director or producer or somebody else, that's where you go. You go for their money, but now the business is changing. It's changing
again. I mean, there was still is to a certain extent.
Yeah.
The period of the mighty mega agencies, CAAs and William Morris, and them having everyone in house, and basically brokering deals, and studios became nothing but distribution entities.
Yep.
Pay for P&A
Yeah.
and put the movie out. But the creative team was over here, had nothing to do with the studio
It's
at
true.
all.
That's true.
So I don't know, it's all changing. And now, frankly, you look under the Netflix umbrella is where everyone seems to want to be.
It is. But if Netflix money dries up, then what?
Yeah.
Well, then there's a contraction again.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to be out of work.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it doesn't dry up. I'm hoping it changes. I don't think Netflix's money is going to dry up, but I do think that they're going to change their business model, tighten the belt a little bit.
Well, they have to.
They have to.
Yeah, that's a given. They're not Amazon.
They're not backstopped.
He can over there he can make goofy movies forever.
Yeah. Amazon makes enough money, clears enough money in profit every year off of just selling junk on the internet, unrelated to the movie business, to buy and sell every Hollywood studio 10 times over.
Yeah.
They just do. I mean, they make $100 billion a year in profit. Hollywood studios only make about $10 to $12 billion total between all of them.
I remember when it was a big deal.
Disney's
when
done
Hollywood
$7.
Yeah, that's it all by itself. Yeah. So
yeah.
There will be contraction.
There will be. I'm just surprised that, frankly, that Amazon hasn't gone on a spending spree the way the others have. And the only reason, I guess, is, according to analysts, there's a reason why ANAL is the first part of analyst. So the only reason that they haven't is because they don't want to drag the stock price down.
Yeah.
Because if the movie division becomes a huge, a boondoggle very quickly, then it could drag the other stock price down. And in order to fund the movies, they need the overall stock price to be high. So it's a balancing act, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, we are going to get into it. We're going to start off. I got a bunch of anime here, some great new anime, including a bunch of stuff from Funimation that warrants attention. Attack on Titan is a fantastic science fiction mecha series. It is, again, in the tradition of Space Cruiser Yamato, Star Blazers, and all the rest of the fun, space-going Star Wars-ish sagas that always show up in anime. And Attack on Titan is really one of the very best. They know it's one of the best. It's one of the most popular. And they've got Attack on Titan Season 3, Part 1, just Part 1, and it's the craziest box set. It's absolutely beautiful. They've got a 24-page digibook with fantastic, beautiful artwork and comics from the original Japanese release, and it's really, really beautiful. Tons of extras and special features on it. It's really, really beautiful. If you don't know the story, if you're entering at season 3, I'm not going to explain it to you. This is an epic space opera, the likes of which doesn't exist anywhere else in anime or outside of anime. Go and catch up with Attack on Titan season 1. It is really, really great. It is classic Joseph Campbell stuff. It rivals Star Wars.
Yeah.
It rivals Space Cruiser Yamato, frankly.
Yeah.
It is really, really good. And season 3, part 1 is absolutely terrific. We also have another installment of Free Dive. That's Free ! Dive to the Future season 3. That of course is it's guys who swim, and it's a kind of a teen drama centered around a swim team. And the guys are all in college now, and trying to look at their future lives. It's fine. It's got a following. The world of Free has been very popular with a lot of kids, especially American kids. I'm not totally clear on why, but it's there. And as long as we're on the sports thing, they also have the complete series of All Out! ! That means it's cooler than Free because it's got 2 exclamation points and it's all in caps. All Out is all about rugby. But it's more basically the same kind of thing as Free. It's just guys playing rugby, and all the drama that goes with that. And as if that's not enough, we also have Hanebado! Hanebado. That is about badminton. What's with all the sports stuff, right? It's a thing. It's a thing in Japan.
It's an extremely popular sport, badminton. They take it as seriously as we do tennis.
But, swimming, rugby, badminton, anyway, that's the thing in anime these days is like, they know that the kids are playing sports in school, so that's what they go for. Anyway, the complete series of Hanebado, which only has 1 exclamation point, and it is effectively the same kind of thing, except we're talking about girls now. So the others are all boys playing badminton, boys swimming. Now it's boys playing rugby, boys swimming. Now it's girls playing badminton, and it's actually quite good. I think I probably appreciate it more than the others. And then we've got just a few others from Funimation. The complete uncut Hinamatsuri series. Hinamatsuri. These are all on Blu-ray, by the way, except for Free, which is a Blu-ray DVD combo set, and Attack on Titan, which is Blu-ray DVD combo. Everything else is just Blu-ray. And Hinamatsuri is about a girl she's psychic. She's no more than psychic. She's telekinetic, and oh boy, how to even go into this? So she's I don't want to call her a mascot or a pet, but because she's not, she's a human being. But she winds up kind of being a burden to this yakuza. How do I even put this? What's a better analogy here? It's not Lilo and Stitch. It's not E.T. It's what was the Takeshi Kitano movie? Kikajuru? Was that the one where he's kind of a mobster and he's got that little boy he's towing around?
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah.
Except in anime, and she's psychic.
Yeah.
And she can move things with her mind. That's what it is. So yeah, you got a yakuza who's got to basically take care of this freakish little girl. And it's not quite as sentimental as I think it wants to be, but it's all right. It's fine. And I guess it has a bit of a following. Island, the complete series. This takes place on the island of Urashima, where, and I don't even know if that's a real island or not, but there's a guy that washes ashore and says, "I'm from the future."
Yeah.
And he doesn't say, look out for the Terminator. There's a whole drama that connects to the island and the culture on the island, the people who live on the island, and there are some all really interesting existential questions that float around. It's also very, very beautifully animated, very sensitively drawn. Island, the complete series, really very mature anime. And Rewrited or Rewrite D, or however you pronounce it. Derrida, Who Leaps Through Time, the complete series. Anyway, this is kind of sort of mystical sci-fi fantasy. It's there is kind of a Terminator thing going on here that deals with machine war in the future and somebody with a messianic calling who wakes up in the future and has to fulfill their destiny, the usual deal. But really interesting artwork, great production design, and worth checking out. That's spelled Rerided. Pronounce it however you want. It's the first two letters are capped, and so is the last. And Derrida, Who Leaps Through Time. Just know that it's about Derrida, Who Leaps Through Time. A few other anime titles here that are not from Funimation. We have Sakura Wars, the complete series. This is a little bit of a weird thing. This is from Section 23 in their Sentai library. What is unusual is this is 25 episodes on 2 discs in standard definition, but it's a Blu-ray. So be fairly warned. They make this very clear. It's a Blu-ray. It will play in a Blu-ray player. You will put it in a Blu-ray player. You will get Blu-ray resolution. You will get HD resolution, but it's still standard definition. Standard definition on a high-def disc. It's a very strange thing. I'm not anyway. It doesn't look bad. Most players these days are up converters, and Sakura Wars is it's a little bit dated now, but and that's why it's all right. It all starts in 1918, and it begins with a demon attack on Tokyo, and you go from a kaiju story into a bit of a mecha story with these robots and androids, and it's a good show. It's a little dated, but it still resonates. Also from Sentai. On Blu-ray, Devil's Line, the complete collection. Devil's Line is a really cool reconceptualization of the vampire saga, and these are about vampires that you just can't kill. All the lore has been rewritten, and it's a complete. Now vampires are just roaming Tokyo, and it's a real problem.
It always is.
It always is, right?
Yeah.
Devil's Line is actually really very interesting. It's very smart. I could see them doing this as a live action. I could see somebody getting live action. It's that because vampires are always more interesting live action. Another one from Sentai. We got a couple more from Sentai, and then one from the really golden one from G Kids. Last two from Sentai is Sorceress Stabber Orphan, spelled Orphen. That's 2 seasons, 47 episodes of a pretty decent mystical telling that felt very Dark Crystal to me. Dark Crystal drops at the end of the month too, doesn't it? On Amazon or whatever, whoever's doing it. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I want to see what they do with that. Hope it's not too CGI. Hope we kept the puppetry. Anyway, this feels very Dark Crystal-ish, only with human characters. But the writing's good. It's got a little bit of comedy in it that's a little bit off-putting, goes a little bit haywire. But otherwise, Sorceress Stabber Orphan is to be recommended. And then the last one from Sentai here is Waiting in the Summer, the complete collection, which also has an English dub version on it. This is, a little bit inside baseball. It's all about a bunch of kids, and they're, hanging out over the holidays and just kind of doing a general teen thing that we get with these kinds of movies, except this is anime. Kids over the summer. It's a little bit melodramatic. It's a little soapy, but it's okay. The best of all of these, however, is yet another wonderful series release from G Kids and Shout Factory. It is the complete series of Ronja, the Robber's Daughter, which is directed by Goro Miyazaki. This has English audio on it as well. I recommend that you not listen to the English audio. The voice acting is very, very good, but the Japanese voices are better, and the animation is beautiful, as you would expect from anything Studio Ghibli. And Goro Miyazaki is certainly keeping the Miyazaki clan in good. It is just really, really wonderful. This is based on a novel by Astrid Lindgren. We talked about Being Astrid a few weeks ago, the creator of Pippi Longstocking. So this is actually anime based on a Lindgren novel about this girl and who is born into a kind of a clan of thieves. And as she grows up, it becomes a little bit of a Brave story, like Pixar's Brave, right? You know, except she's not royal. She's like royal banditry, right? And it goes into a really, really wonderful pastoral direction too, and it's great. The combination of Lindgren storytelling and Japanese animation is really a very nice fusion. So very, very smart. Ronja, the Robber's Daughter, the complete series, 26 episodes, sorry. And the English narration is by Gillian Anderson.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that lovely? So there we go. That's our anime this week.
Want to do a couple new movies?
Yeah, let's do new movies. We got great ones this week.
Well, yeah, including Rocket Man, Taron Egerton as Elton John. Taron doing fantastic work in this film.
Yes,
a film
amazing.
That I thoroughly
He's going to win an
enjoyed.
Oscar.
You know, I'm wondering if folks are going to remember this film by the time that part of the year rolls around.
I'll tell you why they'll remember it. Because Paramount has basically bet their entire future on this movie. I know it sounds weird. It's not a franchise, but here's how I know that. And I posted a picture of this on DigiGods. Because they sent the swag of all swag with this. I get this big box from Paramount. I'm like, there are no box sets coming out from Paramount. What is this? Usually the size of the box dictates what's in it, right? I open it up, and there is the 4K of Rocket Man. Plus Rocket Man Elton John sunglasses, plus a shiny silver Rocket Man jacket.
Oh, get out.
No.
Like full size?
Full size. Full on jacket. like full on jacket, plus a karaoke microphone deal. Like a speaker and a microphone to do karaoke.
That is sick.
It's all in this big box. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I like the movie. You're not going to convince me to like it more with all this swag, but I'm impressed.
I'm going to remember now.
I'm impressed. I'm going to remember now. They're going to do a number on the awards campaign. So I put on the jacket and I put on the sunglasses. And my daughter was watching some Disney movie, and I walk in and she looks at me. And she gives me this long stare for about 16 seconds. And then she says, "Why do you look weird?" So there it is.
Yeah, because of rock and roll, baby.
Yeah.
Look, this is a fantastic DVD. All kinds of stuff on it in terms of special features, extended musical sequences, deleted scenes, etc., etc., etc. It's gorgeous. I rather enjoyed this movie.
I love this movie.
Dexter Fletcher's, of course, they brought in Dexter to finish Bohemian after that whole situation. So plainly, they're looking for another one of those. And this was a great performance by Jamie Bell. Was really good in this movie too.
Oh, Jamie Bell is fantastic as
Bernie.
As Bernie.
Playing Bernie.
Look. Here's the thing about Rocket Man. It is not Bohemian Rhapsody because it really does have staged musical numbers, like Broadway type musical numbers, which are sort of fantasy elements in it.
It's a musical.
It's a musical. It's a straight up musical. A friend of mine, Michael J. I'm going to put his name right out there. Very successful songwriter. Had a song in Top Gun, and he works with a lot of top artists to this day. He's been around. He's had a great career for 30, 40 years. Michael J. hates this movie.
Why does
He hates it because we had a thing after this. He's like, "How could you like it?" I said, "Because it's Elton John and the songs are great." He said he didn't sing Crocodile Rock when he did the big performance at the on Sunset Strip, right?
The Troubadour.
At the Troubadour, he goes, he didn't sing Crocodile Rock. He couldn't have because the song wasn't written for like another. And he goes into the timeline, right? It's like all the wrong songs. And he goes, and Bernie, and he knows this stuff. He knows the story inside out. And so all the details that are wrong drove him crazy.
I understand
nuts.
that. But this is the reason why Rocket Man works for me. Not that Bohemian Rhapsody and many of the other ones that we've seen, Val Kilmer in that Doors movie, over the years, right? Here's the thing that's different about Rocket Man. Elton makes it.
Yeah.
He didn't die when he was 27. You watch this movie and you don't have
Yeah.
a knot in your stomach
That's
for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
waiting for the big horrible when the AIDS
Yeah.
got him and when the alcohol got him and when
Yeah.
the shooting up got him. No, nothing gets out. He's over there. He's fine.
He's fine.
So you watch this movie
He's happy.
knowing that everything turns out great. He has
He's happy.
contributed. And
He's
he,
rich.
He puts
He's
the lie
successful.
to all of that rock and roll crap. I mean,
He's
all
got
of
a
the Pearl
family.
Jam guy. I mean, go through
Yeah.
the litany of all the guys who've
Yeah.
been dead and all that.
No.
Our guys who we came up with through.
Yeah.
Start with Kurt
Jimi
Cobain.
Hendrix.
All those guys. Elvis puts
Mama
a lot of all that
Cass.
bullshit. He
Yeah.
puts the lie to us. Like, that's
Yeah.
a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
No. You could
Yeah.
be a rock and roll star, live to be an old queen,
Yeah.
help cure AIDS, and
win Tonys and win Oscars and have a family
Yeah.
and the whole 9 yards.
Oh, yeah. So Elton puts to light all that foolishness,
Yeah.
and that's what I love about it. I watched that movie with no knot in my stomach, sir. Thank you, Elton. For doing
Yep.
that. Killers Anonymous. Killers Anonymous is a Gary Oldman, Jessica Alba film. About these guys, this group of killers who are in this thing like Alcoholics Anonymous or something
Yep.
like that. And then it turns out somebody tries to kill the senator. And one of them probably tried
Yeah.
to do it, and it's going to mess up their whole little thing. It's kind of
Oh,
John
yeah.
Wicky in that way with the
Sure.
underground kind of thing. You know what? Don't work. Don't work at all. Deleted scenes, alternate ending, and you know what? They should have came up with 4 or 5 alternate endings and picked a different one because the one that's actually in the movie sucks. The Last Black Man in San Francisco, Joe Talbot film.
Really good.
This is just such a beautiful, beautiful movie, a poetic film. That really, for young man's directorial debut. Been making shorts,
Yeah.
for a whole bunch of him and this group for
Yeah.
a long time. Basically, it's about the gentrification of San Francisco and what it does to this one particular family, this one particular man whose house was lost sometime in the 90s, and he keeps returning to this house that he remembers being in as a child with
Yeah.
his parents when his family was intact, and the drugs hit the city. And his mother and his father you got caught up, and then the house was lost.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. What this movie also knows, though, is that this gentrification thing is interesting in the way that it works. When he goes back to his home, there's this white family living in his home, and they are being gentrified
Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
their home, his
Yeah.
home, and it's like it doesn't care. It doesn't care. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Here's what I love about this movie. It does something that I don't normally expect young filmmakers to do, and it understands that if you want to make a statement about something, you don't have to make a statement.
Mm-mm.
You just need to tell a human story, and the statement will ride on that story if the story is well told, if the characters are true.
Yeah.
Too often people do the other thing. They're like, I'm going to make a movie that's going to send this message. And then you populate it with these two-dimensional cardboard characters that you're just moving around a chessboard, and nobody winds up caring.
Yeah,
Because you have to care first. The caring is channels you into whatever the message is that you're telling. And he says, I don't need to make a statement about gentrification and all this. I'm just going to tell a true story about this guy.
This is what this looks like.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And there's nobody there to make any judgments of or about. There are no bad guys or evil people. Yeah, I mean, even Max Greenfield's, he's just, it's a lovely, lovely, beautiful movie. Last Black Man in San Francisco. The Hustle. Man, this wanted so bad to be that, what was that Michael Caine movie? Dirty Rotten Scoundrels?
Yeah.
I saw the female Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. With Rebel Wilson and Anne Hathaway.
No.
No. You know what's why this doesn't work? It's because at this point, I'm going to point at Rebel Wilson too.
Yeah.
That routine you've been doing, that's not funny anymore.
It's old.
That's old.
It's old.
A sassy big fat girl is not. That's not funny anymore.
And I'm going to say something else. I know people have dumped on Cats a lot already, but let's go there. She's going to do that in Cats as well. Except with digital fur.
Yeah.
And it ain't going to work.
It ain't going to work at all.
No.
It's
Not going to work.
Funny. And whatever made Anne Hathaway think she could do jokes like that, I have no idea what it is. You going to pop over to some?
Let me hit some classic movies here. We got Twilight Time, Kino, and Juno. Some stuff from Juno, and a couple of things from Mill Creek, too. So a couple from Twilight Time this month. Elvis Presley in Wild in the Country, which is not your typical Elvis Presley movie because it's directed by Philip Dunn, who's a real director, and because it is a screenplay by Clifford Odets.
Yeah.
Great playwright. Clifford Odets wrote the screenplay, and a beautiful screenplay it is. It's based not on Odets' original material, though. It's based on a novel by J.R. Salamanca, and it's a really, really good movie. It's really, really sharp. Made in 1961. it's very kind of Douglas Sirkish in terms of its melodrama and the way that it spins this particular story. But Elvis is fantastic. He plays this this kid from the Shenandoah Valley who's who's trying to get a better life. Hope Lang, who would later show up in the Mom and Ghost and Mrs. Muir on TV, is the psychiatrist who's trying to help him. It's
when people talk about Elvis and Elvis movies and they start thinking about all those perfectly fun but goofy movies,
yeah,
I always have to remind them of that movie and the movie that he made the year before, Flaming Star.
Right.
Which were these two dead serious movies in which Elvis is very good.
Really good. He's really good.
And then he decides to do the other thing, go the other way.
Because
but, he could have been Steve McQueen though.
But a lot of great performances in here. Rayford Johnson's in here. John Ireland, Tuesday Weld. It's a really wonderful, wonderful cast, and fantastic CinemaScope photography. It's really beautiful. And of course, as with most Twilight Time movies, which you get at TwilightTimeMovies.com, TwilightTimeMovies.com has nice isolated score track. You also have that isolated music track for The President's Lady, which it also includes a vintage radio show and an original trailer. This is a Henry Levin directed film from 1953, which has one of the most unusual Charlton Heston performances I have ever seen. I had forgotten how unusual it was. Apparently this is also a historically factual thing. So this is all about President Andrew Jackson. Mm-hmm. This is allegedly an episode from the life of the President Andrew Jackson.
Yeah.
And his relationship with a woman known by the name of Rachel Donaldson,
mm-hmm.
who was married at
mm-hmm.
the time. And apparently it was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And, if you don't know this story, you might want to watch the movie. I'm surprised this hasn't been remade. But it's
tough to remake it because Andrew Jackson was just terrible.
An awful man.
And just an awful person.
So but in an awful period in time,
but he's not a heroic figure at all.
Yeah, so this tries to make him a little heroic and romantic.
Yeah.
Look, you're watching this basically for Charlton Heston. That's why you're watching this. Charlton Heston just does the thing that he does, which is he just makes you swoon. Whether you're straight, gay, I don't care. Whether you're a man or a woman, you swoon for Chuck. You just do. I don't care if the whole NRA thing. You can hate him for that. I don't care. But in the movies, he makes you swoon.
Yeah. Look, first of all, we get Chuck all wrong. Chuck marched with Martin Luther King, for God's sake.
Yeah.
So and the NRA thing was like 1980.
Yeah.
The NRA. I was a member of the NRA in 1980. All right. I was in the Air Force in 1980. Yeah. I was a member of the NRA. So but people are goofy.
Great Alfred Newman music on this,
Alfred
by the way.
Newman.
Great Alfred Newman music. Kino's thrown a bunch of great stuff at us this month too. The first off is Day of the Outlaw, which is just really wonderful, fantastic trash. This is an Andre de Toth directed movie from 1959. It was a UA film at the time, and it wound up in the MGM library, which now winds up being licensed by 20th to Kino Lorber. That's how this thing came. But this is just really great, like exploitation Western stuff. It's like I Spit on Your Grave Western style, right? It's women in bustiers and men who abuse women and women who need to get revenge on the men and the banditos. And it's just the Wild West is just a nasty sexual roughie as much as they could do in 1959, as much as they could get away with. So anyway, it's a wonderful cast here. Robert Ryan, Burl Ives, Tina Louise shows up in here as well. It's a really fun, just trashy Western. Elisha Cook Jr. And I'm sure Tarantino loves this.
Oh,
audio commentary by Jeremy Arnold is also a lot of fun. The American Film Theater line continues to release its titles individually. These were originally released in boxed sets by Kino years ago and on DVD, and they're releasing them individually now on Blu-ray, which is a little bit annoying, but they continue to be out there. This was the project of producer Ely Landau, back in the 1970s when he decided to get to do movies based on a series of very, very famous plays. It's really all over the map, and it's very, very diverse, and there are a lot of interesting things here. The two being released this week are In Celebration and Butley. Butley is based on the play by Simon Gray. It stars Alan Bates. And this is one of the, this is very distinguished British boarding school stuff, Browning version stuff, right? It's kind of in that same vein. And then In Celebration also stars Alan Bates in an adaptation of a David Story play. This one is much more interesting because... two reasons. Number one, directed by Lindsay Anderson, one of the angry young men who did If and many other great films, and who really directs the hell out of this in a beautiful way. It's just top-notch Lindsay Anderson directing from 1975, but also because it co-stars with Alan Bates a young Brian Cox.
Oh.
And we're so accustomed to Brian Cox being the heavy, the big, that bear of a guy that he's been playing for the last 20 or 30 years, ever since Manhunter.
Yeah.
But, Brian Cox, man, in 75, he still had it. He's like a young Anthony Hopkins, too. He's been killing it for years.
Yeah. We forget. Yeah.
So... anyway, it's really, really, I'll tell you, In Celebration is terrific. But both of them, you can't go wrong. It's just good Alan Bates acting. Simon Gray's Butley and In Celebration. Oh, and Butley, should point out, directed by Harold Pinter, who, great writer, not a great director.
Not a great director.
Yeah. I mean, it's workmanlike. One more here, and then I'll turn it back over to you. Buster Keaton Collection Volume 3 from Cohen. They are competing with Kino. Kino released all the original Buster Keaton stuff in their library, the Black Hawk Films collection, onto Blu-ray years ago, and now Cohen is competing with Kino by releasing all of their Buster Keaton stuff that they inherited when they bought some other major collections, including the Rohauer collection, which has most of the same stuff, but in better prints and better source material too in some cases. So here we've got Buster Keaton Volume 3, 7 Chances, and Battling Butler, new restorations and new scores. So double up on the Kino if you can. It's just as fun to have several versions of this. These are two classic Buster Keaton silents from 1925 and 26. And Battling Butler, I think, is just such an underrated film. 7 Chances is the one that a lot of people point to. It has some of Buster Keaton's best stunts in it, but because it's all about trying to get married by the deadline so we can inherit $7 million. That's the gimmick in it. It's pretty great. But Battling Butler, was a real favorite of Buster Keaton's. It's very, very sentimental. It's based on a play. It's a mistaken identity story that is done so beautifully and so wonderfully, and it ends up with a boxing match in Madison Square Garden. It's just beautiful. So fantastic transfer here from Cohen from the collection of 7 Chances and Battling Butler, the Buster Keaton Collection, Volume 3.
Knock out a couple of docs.
Hit them.
Including this one, Anti-Nowhere League, We Are the League. This is a documentary about the seminal British punk band, We Are the League. Anti-Nowhere League is the name of the Anti-Nowhere League is the name of the band. We Are the League is the name of the album. They formed in 1979.
Yep.
40 years ago. I graduated from high school in 1949. In 1979. I wish we got 1949. That'd be terrible. 1979, and I was a bit of a punker myself. These guys were right up there with the Sex Pistols, Sid Vicious, all of those guys who were doing the damn thing back in the day. This is a really, really neat film that sort of redocuments all of that. It's packed full of never before seen footage, including from their very first show at the Lyceum in London. It has footage from Stuart Copeland's great punk film, So What? And just all kinds of neat stuff. So if you're a lover of punk, this is something you really just have to add to your collection, and it's just good stuff all the way around. You'll probably want to go ahead and put it with From Liverpool to Hamburg, the Beatles, made on Merseyside.
Yeah.
This is just another, young Beatles.
Beatles are, thanks to yesterday, the Beatles are hot again.
Oh, yeah.
And 50th anniversary of Abbey Road, right?
Yeah.
It's all this stuff. That's
Yeah, Ringo's out there on tour.
Yeah.
So that whole thing is going on. So it's really just a lovely film that with lots of fantastic footage from back in the day of the Beatles. This documentary, Be Natural. I have been teaching about this filmmaker, Alice Guy-Blaché. So this is a documentary about the filmmaker.
It's a fantastic documentary.
And no, you've never heard of her. Alice Guy was in the room when the Lumiere brothers first used their projector to screen footage of that train arriving at
Train La Ciotat.
Yeah.
Because I've lived near La Ciotat. I know it well.
That thing, and it was the big thing. She was in the room. She was 18 years old. Alice Guy is probably the very first filmmaker. Period. Not first female filmmaker, but she's probably the very first filmmaker because she was she was the first filmmaker that understood that we can tell stories with this. We don't just have to shoot stuff happening.
Yeah.
All of which was intriguing and fascinating at that time. But she realized, no, I can tell stories. There are techniques of cinema, the close-up.
Yeah.
Alice Guy invented the close-up.
She did.
She was the one
and people used to say that it was the Great Train Robbery that was the first close-up. It was not.
No. Oh, yeah. In narrative storytelling, Alice Guy came to America, went on to start a film studio in New Jersey, in Fort Lee, New Jersey, Solax Studios.
Yeah.
She made thousands upon thousands of films. Alice Guy was likely one of the first people to make sound films a full decade. Before when we think of sound, the talkies coming in. Alice Guy was already making sound films. Alice Guy was doing hand-painted colored films a decade before anybody else was thinking about these things. So anyway, this is just a fantastic film, Be Natural, the untold story of Alice Guy-Blaché, narrated by Jodie Foster. I think we're going to be talking to...
Well, yes, Pamela Green is due to be our guest on this podcast.
The director, producer.
At the end of this show. So, yes, she's not here yet, so... I just want to make sure she's able to find her way to the studio. But yes, that is due to be our big surprise at the end of the show.
And we have a lovely documentary. I am Patrick Swayze. I always adored Patrick Swayze.
I did too. It makes me so sad because he would be still with us and he would be doing really interesting work as an actor.
As an actor, probably on some really great series.
Aging into some really interesting parts, and it's just so sad.
But his career, he left several extraordinary performances.
Yeah.
Not Oscar kind of caliber performances, but the sort of performances that ingrain themselves into your psyche.
Yeah.
That's the kind of actor Patrick Swayze was, a kind and gentle soul, and this is a wonderful film that honors him. From PBS, Nova, The Planets is just a fantastic documentary that explores all of the planets in our solar system one by one. It's a really, really good film, particularly on the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon missions and our sort of launching out into space.
So much space stuff.
Yeah.
So much great
Can't
space
go wrong
stuff.
with any of that. Fantastic.
And I got another interesting space thing momentarily, but the Juno Selects line of classic movies comes out on DVD through MVD, Music Video Distributors, MVD Visual, and they've got 3 this week that are just, I mean, they're really cool independent films from bygone eras, usually the 1950s. And you would otherwise probably never have known these movies existed, never have cared, but Juno finds them like a gem and puts them out, and it is just absolutely wonderful that they do. I had never seen any of these. So it's such a great discovery. Conflict of Wings is the first one from 1954. And this is just such an unusual melodrama that is about a village where the government wants to convert a bird sanctuary nearby into a firing range. And so now you get this kind of save the tiger type battle between the people in the town and the government. And it's based on a novel, which I had never heard of either. And it's just really good, solid melodrama. It's really good, directed by a guy named John Eldridge, I'm unfamiliar with. And it's just a really, really good, solid film, originally made by Beaconsfield Film Studios. It's just terrific. Another one, The Holy Terrors in Child's Play. This is they call this the first atomic-powered comedy. This was also made by many of the same people, but this was directed by a woman in 1954, which is relatively unheard of. to be honest. Just a fantastic, and a British film in 1954, directed by a woman named Margaret Thompson, which I thought was, wow, there we go, absolutely outstanding. And she apparently had a much longer. I mean, we're talking about Alice Guy-Blaché, and apparently Margaret Thompson had something of a moment in the 1950s. So
that's really interesting, coming on the heels of Alice there.
Absolutely. So this has a lot of people who'd go on to do much bigger things in other things. You're gonna see people that you recognize from British television and in subsequent years. And what's the real thing here? This is basically about a bunch of kids. The story's very, very simple and very cute. It's kind of Bugsy Malone-ish. It's about a bunch of kids who come into possession of an atomic chemistry set, and they are able to do things you would never imagine kids should be able to do with an atomic set, but they do kid things with it. It's actually really, really, really sweet, very cleverly written. It's beautiful. And here's the thing: there's an actor in here by the name of Peter Sallis, much younger man at the time in the 1950s, but he only recently passed away. And while he was alive, in the last years of his life, he was the voice of Wallace in Wallace and Gromit.
Oh,
isn't that sweet?
Fantastic.
And then the last one is Doublecross. All is one word, Doublecross. This was made in 1951, and it is a rather remarkable noir, to be honest. It all takes place in Cornwall, and it's got some tremendous performances in it. And it does things that American noirs just are not. I mean, wouldn't even be doing in the 1950s. You migrated to a different kind of noir, which is sort of a paranoid post-nuclear Cold War noir, which isn't the same as the stuff they were doing in the 30s and 40s. So this is a very interesting noir for the 50s, really, really taking a lot of chances, directed by Anthony Squire, also Beaconsfield Film Studios. And very, very interesting. Great performance by Donald Houston. Who you may have seen him in The Longest Day. No relationship to any of the Houstons in the U.S. He spells it Houston, which means he probably pronounces it Houston, like the British often would. But there's a great thing here with secret documents and smuggling, and it's a lot of fun. It feels almost like an early Hitchcock film too. And then real quickly, we got a couple of compilation things here from Mill Creek. Shark Bait, 6 killer shark films, plus a 7th bite to sink your teeth into. These are all really very silly movies, especially Zombie Shark from 2014. Didn't even know that was made. Swamp Shark, Santa Jaws, Ozark Sharks, Mississippi River Sharks, Ghost Shark. This is insane. The legacy that Jaws has wrought, and every single one of these has been made within the last 5 years, except for one. Every single one of them. It's ridiculous. But if you can't get enough bad shark movies, you're going to love it. And then to go with that, It Hits the Fan, 4 apocalyptic disaster movies. These are also silly. Chrome Angels, Ghouls, Judgment Day, and Tornado Warning. These have all also been made just within the past 10 years, and they're just like low budget CGI laden attempts to do modern day disaster movies in the Irwin Allen mold. Big deal.
Yeah, but they have no irony in them.
There's no irony, but it's great. If you want a bunch of trash to throw on in the background, it's campy. That's it. It's camp fun.
A little irony would be nice. Yeah. A little bit of TV.
Yeah.
From Acorn, this original series from out of Denmark and New Zealand. I really, really dug this. It's called Straightforward. It's about this con woman who a family member of hers is killed by this gangster. She decides to take the gangster for a bunch of dough.
Okay.
Things go a little bit sideways. She has to take it on the heel in tow. Goes to New Zealand, and it's all about 8 episodes, 1 season. But this is as tightly and sharply written, performed, acted, and shot. Plus, it's in New Zealand, so it's beautiful. Everything as any American noir sort of television. And what I like about it, it has intention. This means to do 8 episodes on 2 discs in this particular case, and get out of there. And it is just a steamroller. That's the way I like my television.
Yeah.
Just a steamroller, man.
Yeah.
I really just love the heck out of that. The 10th season of NCIS Los Angeles, on the other hand, has been dragging on for 10 years.
Yeah.
And they've been doing, hey, look, O'Connell and LL Cool J, if you had said to me 10 years ago. You know the kid that played Robin and that rapper, do it. They're gonna be on this TV show this cop TV show for 10 years.
So weird.
I thought you were crazy. Over 45 minutes of special features and other crap.
It's just weird to me. It's a fascinating thing. For the longest time in like mainly in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, they tried to make movie stars of a lot of rock stars.
Yeah.
Remember, like
Mick
Mick made a real
Jagger,
shot at David Bowie.
Yeah.
And Bowie would go on to have an okay career as an actor, a few things. Mick has done a few things. Everybody else just fell on their faces. But they gave up on it. And then suddenly the rappers came around in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And they turned into movie stars.
Oh, yeah.
Like TV stars. I mean, Will Smith.
Ice Cube,
Queen
Ice-T.
Latifah.
Ice-T has been on that TV show
for 30 years, 25,
insane.
whatever it's been. LL Cool J. I mean, they turned into, like, suddenly those were the music industry people who were able. And if you think about it, it sort of makes sense. If you're a singer, you're a musician.
Yeah.
If you're a hip hop artist,
no, that's all.
You're a storyteller.
That's all.
It's
a
different
kind of
thing.
thing. Yeah,
it is
the whole thing. Homeland, a series that I always had issues with Homeland.
Based on an Israeli series.
Based on an Israeli
yes.
series, in Claire Danes, and it's just what she. I'm like that chick needs to be on medication. I'm like,
not on assignment.
Not on assignment, baby. Take your Ritalin. That's what you need. 3 discs contains all 12 episodes of the complete 7th season. But I'm sorry, I see it like that, man.
Yeah, I hear you. Let me hit a couple of foreign titles here. 4, not a couple. I'm gonna hit 4. Some wonderful stuff from Criterion this month. And Ozu is somebody. It's always great when you get an Ozu film from Criterion because they treat it as delicately as he treated his subjects. The Flavor of Green Tea Over Rice. Isn't that a perfect Ozu title?
Yeah.
Because when you see that, you realize that is because when Ozu gives you a title like The Flavor of Green Tea Over Rice, what that means is the movie is literally about the flavor of green tea over rice. That is literally what the movie's about. But that's also a metaphor for something.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just beautiful. This is 1952. Ozu in his kind of his early prime. And it is exactly what his movies are. This is a portrait of a couple, and it's sort of like his version of Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage.
Yeah,
is maybe a way to do it. It's a marriage coming apart and dealing with all of the pressures that are on them from Japanese society and society generally and the world and. Family, in this case, a niece. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie. There was a new 4K digital restoration of it, which is the source for this Blu-ray. The audio is beautiful. The mono soundtracks for Japanese films in the 1950s are always so wonderful. They're so textured. They really were doing a great job recording at the time. And this also includes a 1937 Ozu feature, What Did the Lady Forget?, that has similar overtones. And you can see how his style evolved between the 30s and the 50s. And David Bordwell's video essay. And a new documentary that's all called Ozu and Nada, which is all about his collaboration with his screenwriter Kogo Nada. It's really just a lovely, lovely film. And then the big mama this week from Criterion is a box set with all kinds of beautiful custom packaging. They really went to town on this. The Koker Trilogy, Koker, 3 films by the late Abbas Kiarostami. Abbas Kiarostami, basically the godfather of the Iranian New Wave. Just an absolutely brilliant, brilliant filmmaker. And these are 3 films that I would be willing to wager most people have never seen. There's only one of them that is significantly well-known in his filmography, so it's nice that all 3 of them are together in one box set. They've all been 2K digitally restored, and the films are from 1987, Where is the Friend's House? From 1992, And Life Goes On, and then 1994 is the film that's been out previously, and which a lot of people know probably a little bit more, is Through the Olive Trees. They are all 1:66 aspect ratio, so not just slightly widescreen, but composed in just the most magnificent way. And these are basically like sort of parables about life and human nature. There's not a sort of narrative through line that makes this a trilogy. It's a thematic through line, and it's poetic, as you would expect from Kiarostami, and very deliberate. And none of the films are terribly long. Through the Olive Trees is the longest one. It's only 100 and some minutes. The others they just breeze by. It's beautiful. And there's a wonderful, wonderful commentary on And Life Goes On with the co-authors of the book on Abbas Kiarostami, Jonathan Rosenbaum and Mernaz Said Vafa, which is as perfect an elucidation of his work and why it matters as you'll ever see. There's also a documentary by Kiarostami called Homework from 1989, which makes it basically 4 Kiarostami films on one box set. And then there's also the 1994 documentary Abbas Kiarostami, Truths and Dreams. Otherwise, there are interviews and conversations on here, and it's just it's superb and wonderful, and a fitting tribute to one of the great filmmakers of the 20th century, who is sadly no longer with us. Oh yeah, you know what? I'll hit this out too, real quickly. Bertrand Blier's "Get Out Your Handkerchiefs" with Gerard Depardieu and Patrick Dewar. This is on Blu-ray from Cohen. It is a 40th anniversary restoration, and worth pointing out, this film won the Academy Award for Bertrand Blier in 1978. It is very, very funny. It is very clever. It's a tiny bit dated just in terms of its style. It's sort of the open marriage thing that is at the center of this. It feels a little bit of its moment. But that said, you're still dealing with Patrick Dewar and the great Gerard Depardieu before he put on 950 pounds that he can't seem to get off, doesn't want to get off. But really, it's a great movie. It has a wonderful score by Georges Delerue. It's a beautiful transfer, and it has a new introduction by Richard Paean. So there you go. You can't lose.
I'll knock off a few of these, if you will. The Vanishing Shadow. This was a set of serials, 12-part serials. It was really, really sort of sharp and innovative and actually groundbreaking in a certain sort of way. Basically, the story follows a son who's avenging his father's death. And over the course of these 12 serials, he devises several very interesting ways to take care of those who took out his dad, including the use of robots and what is believed to be the very first appearance of something called a ray gun, a laser gun, a phaser, as they would later call it on Star Trek, on film, on cinema. So it's very, very innovative, both in the way he was devising to take these folks out and the tools that he used to do it. Includes a couple of extras, including the theatrical trailer for the film and some liner notes and other stuff. Serials were a lot of fun back in the day. You go to a movie, they show a little serial with a cliffhanger on it before the feature film would start. And that's what these were, remastered in 2K from the original 35mm fine-grain print. So this actually looks fantastic. The Vanishing Shadow, a vicious little revenge story. Double Danger. This was a sort of William Palladino, a Thin Man sort of style story with a sort of bon vivant crime writer and his female debutante partner roaming around, living their luxurious lives. They each have their servants and all this kind of stuff. Except the twist here is that they're both actually jewel thieves. And unbeknownst to all of their uptown friends. It's really a fun sort of idea and movie from the Warner Archive collection. Preston Foster and Whitney Bourne in Double Danger, starring Donald Meek and directed by Lou Landers. That's the most important part of that. Damn Yankees, Stanley Dolan at work. This is just a fun film. George Abbott and Stanley Dolan adapting the musical play of Damn Yankees.
Great.
Gwen Verdon. I'm thinking of Gwen now because Gwen, of course, is the subject of Fosse Verdon,
which we talked about
last week with Michelle Wood and with Gwen Verdon in this thing. And I think about the more I think about Gwen Verdon,
the more you realize that she,
it was Gwen.
And to Fosse's credit, when you watch the thinly veiled depiction of their marriage or their disintegrated marriage in all that jazz, you do get a sense that he's not afraid to admit that.
Yeah.
He realizes he's a mess, and she's the one that had it going on.
So they held it together for years. So anyway, Damn Yankees.
I got some other foreign stuff here. I'll go through real quickly. A couple of culty titles from Altered Innocence, which is released, distributed by CAV. Culty foreign titles, but distinguished culty foreign titles. The Erlprince is a Polish genre film that is fairly creepy and fairly arty all at the same time. It's we're not accustomed to Polish films necessarily being mystical horror, supernatural films or whatnot, but this is what that is, and it is. It's interesting. The Erlprince. It's based on a apparently a fairly well known story, but boy, it's creepy. The creepier one is Knife+Heart, which is a French film by Yann Gonzalez that was in competition at Cannes, believe it or not. It stars Vanessa Paradis, who was a teen sensation once upon a time as a singer and would go on to marry Johnny Depp, and then divorce him at exactly the right time before he lost his mind. This is such a bizarre story. I actually almost had nightmares trying to figure out how to detail the story, and then I realized that the Hollywood Reporter quote that they use as a pull quote on the box is really the perfect quote. So I'm going to read it to you. If Dario Argento, Brian De Palma, and Kenneth Anger conceived a three-way love child while watching Cruising and listening to a Giorgio Moroder mixtape, the result would be something like French director Yann Gonzalez's Knife+Heart. There it is. That's it. It takes place in the 70s. That's the Giorgio Moroder angle to it. But this is just it's like a giallo film that has a little bit of French artiness, and that's where the Kenneth Anger, but yet it's got, it's gory, but it's suspenseful. It's completely nuts. But Vanessa Paradis is great in it. She's absolutely terrific. Also got a trio here from Indie Picks. And these are all really, really low budget foreign films, but they're worth checking out. And I'll make mention of them really, really quickly. You can also see Indie Picks Unlimited stuff on Amazon's Prime Video channels. But the first one is called Damned Summer, which is a Portuguese film by director Pedro Caballera. I hope I'm not mutilating it. This is kind of one of those. It's basically a wasted youth movie set in Lisbon, in sort of the poor part of the city, made for next to no money. Caballero was 21 years old when they made this film, and he's just sort of shining a light on a very, very troubled part of the culture in Lisbon. We don't see often too many Portuguese movies outside of Manuel de Oliveira. So that's a new generation of Portuguese filmmaker. The next one is a low budget French film from 2012 by Alvin Case, called The Whirlpool, which made its way around a lot of indie film festivals, including Rotterdam and the Boston Independent Film Festival. And this is about a couple of strange people who meet, two Parisian tourists who are both visiting Niagara Falls at the same time. And it's the relationship that evolves, and like French films often do, when strange people meet, man and a woman, and a toxic affair and pornographic affair, and all these movies. It explores the relationship through the unfamiliarity and the familiarity and the way that they grow. It's actually allegedly inspired by a Bruno Dumont film that I can't stand, 29 Palms, and they apparently pays a bit of homage to Breathless too. I don't really see it. I think this is a much better film than 29 Palms. Very different film from Breathless, but nonetheless, there it is. And then the last one is by Rathish Ravindran. This is a Malayalam film from India. The language is Malayalam. Sorry, Malayalam language. But this is from India, made just last year in 2018, and it's called Pixelia, which is about a guy who has a great job in a big Indian city, and but decides he wants to be an artist. So he quits his job, becomes an Uber driver, and starts writing a graphic novel. And that is when, right in the middle of all this, a transgender woman gets into his Uber one day, and that takes everything on a complete and total unexpected left turn. It is an unusual film for an Indian film, but I've like mostly you hear about Bengali, Tamil, Hindi. There are certain languages that dominate the Indian film industry. Malayalam is not one of them.
No.
And so this is a very, very different Indian film, very different texture, very different culture, very low budget.
Not Bollywood.
Not at all Bollywood. It is the flip side to Bollywood. So if you want to see another side to Indian film, this is one to definitely check out. It was, it was. I don't want to call it a queer film because it is even technically an LGBT film, technically. But there's more going on culturally. It is an Indian film. It is very much as much about India as anything else.
Yeah. A couple of these.
Yeah, let's wrap it out with those.
Stanley and George Abbott edited again the musical Pajama Game, adapting as a film, starring the beautiful, beautiful Doris Day. This is the sexiest Doris ever allowed herself to be. Sort of.
Pajama Game.
Posted, Pajama Game in that little sort of short nighty. Great legs, Doris. The same. These are all the same people from Damn Yankees. Richard Adler and Jerry Ross doing the music choreography by Bob Fosse again. This is a fun film, like all of those films were back in the day. It's funny. This is about the workers at the factory are fighting for a 7-cent raise.
Nice.
That's what they're fighting for.
Yep.
A raise. Roadhouse Murder. It's sort of a wacky David O. Selznick production about this couple that finds a double murder at this inn out in the middle of nowhere, and the guy who's a reporter decides to incriminate himself for the crime, hiding evidence that will exonerate him later, hoping that he'll be able to write a story that will launch his career as a reporter. It works out badly.
And now we have a very, very special portion of the podcast, a rare live in-studio interview of the filmmaker who made a film we talked about earlier. We're talking about director Pamela Green, who made Be Natural, the untold story of Alice Guy-Blaché. Pamela, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for your film. I want to start off by reading something to you. Robert Harris, the archivist who restored Lawrence of Arabia and Spartacus and many other fine films, is a friend and a friend of this podcast. And I was trading some emails with him earlier in the week on a completely different subject, and he had no idea that you were going to be here. And he said, he just volunteered in his email. He said, just watch the Alice Guy-Blaché doc. Amazing. And I answered him, and I said, that's good to know. We're going to be interviewing the filmmaker for our podcast. And he said, please tell her for me that is one of the finest docs I've seen on film history.
Wow.
So I wanted you to hear that.
I'm blushing.
Yes.
He said you would. He said you would.
Yeah.
He said I would blush?
He said he was going to make you blush when he told you that.
That was the goal. But
Can I get his email to thank him?
I would be happy to. He would love to hear from you. I absolutely will. And I have to agree. And we have seen tons of docs on film history. You know, I went to film school and was told that Edwin S. Porter in the Great Train Robbery invented the close-up. You put an end to that in your film, and you learn, and we all learn, and it clearly we're not alone, that Alice Guy basically pioneered a lot of things that a lot of men have been taking credit for decades. Talk a little bit about that.
I did not go to film school.
Okay.
This movie is my film school. And the reason why I decided to take this on was because I feel sometimes subjects pick you. It's a weird thing, but I feel in a way that she looked at me and said, I'm in the wrong box. I'm being misrepresented. Can you help me? And I felt robbed that I didn't know about her. And I felt that she was robbed in a way. So it became an obsession to correct the record. There's so many aspects of her that needed corrections as a whole. So I needed to take on early cinema that I knew nothing about to learn who, what, where. I didn't even know who Edwin S. Porter was, honestly. So I had to do a lot of sleuthing and a lot of detectiving to really not only correct it, but also show the context with early cinema itself for her.
Quite an adventure then. I mean, that's Alice Guy didn't go to film school either, so I think that's an appropriate thing. I mean, it does tend to sometimes teach you things that you have to unlearn.
But she wanted to start at film school,
Yeah.
which people don't know, but it's in her memoir. So she was on the right track.
She, Alice Guy was a very, very young woman, born to a Chilean father and a French mother. Talk a little bit about where she came from and how young she was when she sat in that room with the Lumieres and first watched that projection.
So I wasn't there, but I'm just going by what she was saying and her memoirs. She's such an amazing writer. You know, we talk about her directing, but her writing and her description of things is just incredible. I think that's definitely where she came from, and for everyone is part of her story. She is born and lives with her grandmother for 3 years, so she learns certain things from her grandmother. Then she goes back to Chile. She has to learn Spanish. Her mom is not really at home. That's kind of unusual for that time. She's tending to the business with the dad. So she learns that you have to work to survive. She learns the languages. And she learns her love for stories. So then coming back to France later, her father passes away. She's left alone. All her siblings move out. She's left alone with her mother, and she has to support both of them. So she comes across this job taking on stenography, and coincidentally, this place, it's kind of like if you would call it a Sammy's Camera photography place today. Leon Gaumont, her boss, is not her boss yet. They're kind of together, side by side at this same place, and he eventually buys it. And Gustav Eiffel becomes like one of the board members. I mean, it's hard when I say this stuff. It sounds fiction.
It's an amazing nexus of history. I mean, she's in the middle of everything. Gaumont, Eiffel. And that was the thing that the documentary really was a revelation to me because, I've studied silent film history a long time. My father acted in 2 silent films. I know you're going to do the math and you're going to think that's really weird and you're going to try to figure it out. Don't work on it. And it's an era that really fascinates me. And the one thing that has always been like the missing link is connecting the connective tissue that brings the Lumieres to Edison, that brings Europe to the U.S. It's like you always learn that these 2 parallel things that sort of evolved at the same time. Alice is the connective tissue. She's the one that connects the 2 of them. It's what we've been missing all along. And that's an amazing thing to discover, not just that she is significant in her own right, but she ties Europe to Hollywood or to what will eventually become Hollywood. If you can talk to that a little bit.
Sure. So tying them together, I'll go back to the French part first. People assume there's this one screening and that's it, but there's so many different people that were experimenting at the same time. So she was in the middle of that pocket of, I call it the first class of Silicon Valley of 1895 in a way, because it is kind of like a Silicon Valley. They're all doing this stuff. They're all talking to each other. Who's going to come up with it first? She gets invited to the screening because she happens to be the secretary, and she wants to do whatever she can and be bubbly and excited because she wants to survive. The company is kind of new. So that's where she discovers the Lumiere screening, people exiting the factory, and she infuses something that is very special. Why not use film to tell stories? And that's something that we still go by today, but it went on so long, and we're not giving this woman credit. She says it's the Lumieres, but we just discussed that we believe that her gift of storytelling and the grammar of what we use today. Then she becomes the head of production. She's doing all this stuff. She hires people, including Ben Curray, who ended up becoming the art director for The Wizard of Oz. She ends up coming to the U.S. with her husband. A lot of people say that might have been a mistake, but if she didn't come to the U.S., she wouldn't have started her own studio, which is kind of like the beginning of the studio system, and is making crazy amount of films about racism, immigration, Planned Parenthood, anti-Semitism, women in leading roles in these films. These are all subjects that we're dealing with today, and it's over 100 years later. So is she the only one doing it? No. Is she somebody that's very responsible for creating part of that beginning of Hollywood that we call version 1.0 in Fort Lee, New Jersey, that nobody knows about? Absolutely, because it's not just about being part of pioneering the grammar and the taking the training wheels off of this thing we call cinema. It's also employing people and developing them and pushing the technology and creating new results. And I think that's what's special about her. She was an artist, an entrepreneur, and was technical, which is so rare in one person.
There were a number of women working in the industry at the time, scenarios they called them, and they were directing it. Talk about that transition. What happened? What happened that took women out of these positions of power and authority?
Well, they came later. She's very, persistent to say that she was the first female filmmaker for quite some time. So what happened was that nobody took this business seriously. And that's one of the reasons why I think Alice succeeded in France and then in the U.S., because it was frowned upon. They thought it wasn't going to survive, and it was just a gimmick. So once the money started rolling in, we have somebody in the film, Steve Ross, saying when Wall Street came in the front door, women were shoved out the back door. It became more of an assembly line. You couldn't be a producer, director, writer, all these different roles. It was divided up, and women were no longer of interest, and the men took over.
One thing that I really love about your film is that it is technically so expert. Again, we see a lot of documentaries, and it's oftentimes a lot of talking heads and some, the moving in on stills, and everything is very, very dry. Your film is filled with animations, with all kinds of vibrant, energetic stuff that really brings that era in her life back to life. And it's one of the things that makes it so engrossing is your filmmaking makes her filmmaking more alive for us now. Was that a conscious thing on your part, or was that more instinctual?
It was definitely conscious. I watch a lot of documentaries. I don't watch all of them, but I get bored. If I see a drifting picture for eternity and nothing else is happening, it drives me crazy. I knew from the very beginning for Alice, if I was going to do something, I had to go all the way out, because otherwise it wasn't going to stick. People had done work before. What's going to set it apart from the usual cookie cutter beginning, middle, and end? And honestly, I knew I was going to find things, but I didn't know how much I was going to find. So these pieces help move the story along, and definitely for a modern audience of 2019. And by the way, I was condemned for a lot of this by many historians. Like, why does she need all the animation? She should have just had the interviews of Alice on camera and then the recordings. We don't need to see all that other stuff.
They were all men who said that, weren't they?
No, there's some women too.
Oh, were there?
Cinephiles.
Okay, well, they're wrong. They're wrong.
I made it for everybody, but my main focus was not cinephiles except for accuracy and sharing new information. I actually made it for 14-year-olds, 15-year-old girls. The girls that work with me are in their 20s. They love it. They cry. Boys cry too. Men cry too. And they're excited. They're going with the momentum and the speed of the documentary, and excited about what's next, and they want to watch it again and again. There's a former USC student that has come to 5 screenings now. He just loves it, and he's like, I'm waiting for the Blu-ray. Well, I'm giving you a free Blu-ray. So I think Hollywood and the historians, everybody's always going to have an opinion, but I know what I made it for, and I made it for all ages, like a Pixar-esque movie, so everybody can feel like they're part of it. You're not excluded. You know who everybody is, and you're on this journey watching this determined, amazing survivor go out there and make it happen.
There's a bit of a finding your roots sort of segment or aspect of the film too, where we go through these sort of family trees. One of which takes us through St. Louis quite a lot, my hometown, where I guess it was one of her cameramen. His ancestors were. Talk a little bit about that sort of detective story, family tree sort of thing that you were doing there.
Well, one of the things was for me, I was more interested in finding other people talking about Alice. Because to me, if somebody else talks about someone, it's always stronger than the person, like, I did this, I did that. Well, no, it's better if somebody else talks about it. So when I started, I wanted to find film, descendants, people that might have worked with her, people that might have talked about her, and of course, Hitchcock mentions her, and then through some of that other research, Sergei Eisenstein saw her film but didn't know it was her, which is wonderful. But I started going through her address book. I'm like, there's got to be somebody alive, because she died in 1968. So I just kept looking, and there was this name Pin that kept coming up. And there's so many of them. But it was really Paean, but I just thought of it as Pin and Pins, like so many. And I called this woman, and she said, wow, that really sounds familiar. And then she hooked me up with all these other people on the phone, and I documented it, as you see in the film. And it ended up being that they were all related to this cameraman who happened to be her nephew. And they all kind of look like Alice's siblings. And there was something earlier in the film that I cut out. Ben Curry, who was a production designer, art director, was given an honorary award last year, who did The Wizard of Oz and Phantom of the Opera. He was left in charge when she left France to watch over this nephew. And I was like, I wonder who the hell that nephew is. And the whole time when I'm talking to this Pin family, they're related to that nephew. So making that whole connection was just, it's unbelievable. It's like a gift in documentary filmmaking. Yeah. So, and I love them. I'm actually going to St. Louis. We got another booking to a theater there, and they're so excited. They've never seen the film, and they're all making sure it sells out, and they're going to be talking on the stage for the first time. It's a wonderful thing. They're like partially my family now.
I hope it's at the High Point. It's a beautiful, grand old theater. That film would be perfect for it. When will you be there?
August 30th. It's at the Chase Park.
Oh, the Chase Park Plaza.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And not for my mom. I'll make sure she comes.
Perfect.
So one of the things that I'm always focused on, my wife's a producer, so I've seen her go through the sexism ringer in the business, which can too often pit women against each other because they sense that it has to be more competitive. And you know, I have a 6-year-old daughter, so I'm very aware of what she sees as opportunities. And you know, we had a very interesting experience at Disneyland some weeks ago on the Soarin' ride, where there are pictures of all these famous pilots. And they're mostly men, and there's, you know, one or two women there, Amelia Earhart and maybe one or two others. And my daughter says to me, she says, can women be pilots too? And you know, I almost wanted to cry. And I wonder how many women, if they had known this story before, would have thought it's not entirely a male industry. How many women were discouraged from film careers because Alice's life was not publicized, her accomplishments were not publicized? I mean, we don't know, but
Thousands.
Have you gotten a sense of that?
I just I try to offer Skype or phone calls for Q&As in different theaters, and there was a theater yesterday in Akron, Ohio. And this woman said, I wish I knew about her earlier because it would have changed the trajectory of my film career. I would have been stronger, I would have been tougher, etc. And I'm in film, but not in the same way. When I did the Kickstarter, a woman, I mean, I get emails all the time. it actually affected me because my day job at the time was predominantly male designers and animators. There weren't that many women, and I was like, "Where are these women?" And the people that I worked with would say, "Well, what do you know about editing? And do you know this filmmaker? And you need to know this." And I would go home or feel like really insecure because I didn't know this stuff, or am I good enough, etc. So the more I was working on Alice, the more I became stronger, and I got actually really upset about it. And a lot of those people are no longer in my life because you can do anything you put your mind to. And that's why I made this. I want young girls to see this badass Alice going out there doing all this stuff when it wasn't even thought of as a whole for women to be doing anything like that. So, yes. And anytime I can, I tell little girls, you can do anything. I share Alice's story. And by the way, in my research, I found even more women pilots. So they should be putting more pictures up. I've complained at schools or festivals where I've looked at the walls and it's all alumni men. And I was like, you better change that wall, like, if you want to see me again, because that is unacceptable. So I think Alice, there should be an award named after her at the Academy. I've been talking to the museum for 5 years. I know there's a place for her in there. I made sure of that. But she should be a household name that we always mention and don't have to worry, like, what director again? And what about all the other women that weren't recorded and documented? There was 60 in the teens that this woman at Columbia, Jane Gaines, has been working on. She says, are you going to do that? And I was like, no, I'm not doing a documentary about that. But I want this film to succeed because then it opens the door for other stories like this to be told and get financed. Mm-hmm. And Hollywood did not finance this movie. It was Kickstarter and amazing, amazing donors. I said the Gina Davis Institute, Madeline Denono introduced me to this woman named Jalen Dreyfus. She brought on Regina Scully, Jamie Wolfe, Hugh Hefner, which people look at as a surprise, but he's helped so many women in the private sector. He just doesn't talk about it.
It's interesting, too. Alice Guy, director, of course, but also a producer, also a studio executive. So when you look at her, when young women look at her, they're seeing the across the board what can be done. A successful studio. That studio in New Jersey was very, very successful and for quite a long time. Gina Davis, speaking of her institute, that documentary that she has out right now about the disparity of position. It seems like these two films belong together somehow. Like they should be floating around the world. Gina, of course, is in your film.
Yes.
Somehow it seems like they belong together in the world.
Yes. I mean, they're different in some respects because it's showing, well, no, I guess you're right, because women need to be shown more on screen in these different roles, so it gives confidence to girls about what they're watching, like Brave, et cetera, and all these different amazing heroes. I think Alice is a little bit different in the fact that the movie I was talking earlier, anytime you do any kind of research in academic world, and I'm not an academic. I think I might be one now. I don't know, but I'm a detective. Keep it at that, detective journalist. They take on a slice because budgetarily they can't afford it, and also it's whatever their thesis is, the work. I took on the whole pizza of reintroducing early cinema through a modern lens with all this new information. So, yes, it's Alice's story. Of course, I've corrected her record and it shows that it's been a problem. But also, it shows early cinema and really what really was going on. Because I don't think it's been properly investigated.
Well, a lot of textbooks are going to have to be rewritten. You've just made a lot of textbooks, including textbooks that I used as a student and as a teacher. You've made them obsolete. There are all kinds of assertions there. You've got to take some satisfaction in knowing that you're sending them all back to the drawing board. As we start to wrap up here, a few minutes left, how did you get Jodie Foster?
Well, that's interesting. Lucky me and lucky Alice. When I first started, you got to figure out who you're going to contact to kind of help you put this all together. And I found Joan Simon's book online. Joan Simon co-wrote the film with me. She had curated a show for the Whitney in 2009 for Alice's work, and because of her, a lot of films got restored and preserved. We met after emailing and talking on the phone, and she said, "Who are you going to get as your narrator?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm thinking, the French, etc." And she's like, "Why don't you get Jodie Foster?" And Joan Simon's funny like that because she'll tell me something that's like completely impossible, and she knows my personality. I'll just go and do it. So coincidentally, I was possibly going to work on one of Jodie's films, and it didn't work out. And then I never asked for favors in this town, but I said, "Look, I need a favor. I'd like to be introduced to Jodie's assistant." And I got introduced, and we conversed via email, and she says, "Well, I think the best thing for me to do would be to narrate." Well, yes, thank you. So we met in person, and she recorded the trailer on the spot, and then I didn't see her for a couple of years because I had to go get the funding, etc. And then we started talking. I would show her cuts because the key was to get it all in one piece. And my first cut was 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I was terrified. I'm like, "Oh my God, I don't even know how to edit. I never edited a film before. I have papers in sideways. I have flash cuts. Stuff is off. The mouth is not matching with the audio and some of this stuff." She is definitely going to say, "You know what, Pamela, I just don't think it was for me." And she didn't. She wrote a long email saying how wonderful this stuff is, and it's going to take time for it to get shaped, and we'll go from there. And I sent her a recorder. When I was ready, she recorded the first part from home. I had myself in there temp, and she matched it exactly to when I was cutting it in. It matched exactly where my voice was hitting. And she's been nothing but the ultimate professional supporter. She's a director as well, and never overstepped and always advised when asked. And I think she's one of the most amazing people I've ever met.
I have to ask you about the potential of or interest in a feature film. The equivalent in Man would have a feature film. So what do you think?
Well, originally, I didn't know what to do with Alice. And if I was selfish, I would have made a narrative. Because everybody wants to go and make a narrative first because that's like you get the actress, etc. But I wanted to correct her record, which at times was very painful. The money, the working, etc. Alice and I are a little bit on a break right now. I love her. And, when I see her face here, we see some clips. It's, I have a very special feeling towards her in my heart. But if I would do that, it would have to be very specific. I am a perfectionist, and I kind of need a little bit of a break. I'm still in theatrical. It is coming out on DVD. It's on VOD right now. I have another story that I want to do in between. It's about, it's a true story about a woman before Alice. So, believe it or not, I went even back further in time. I want to be torturing myself more, I guess. But yes, I would love to. But that requires a lot of money, and nobody's asked me. So I'd have to go get the funding myself, etc. So,
well, Tim took my question, which I knew he would. So that's where all of our minds are going. So we do hope you're the best. So we'll wrap this up now. Pamela Green, thank you so much. The film is Be Natural, the untold story of Alice Guy-Blaché. Everyone should go and see this, whether it's VOD or DVD. I recommend you buy the DVD so it's right there on the shelf to show people and to show your daughters, as I'm going to show mine. Pamela Green, thank you so much for your movie and for being here with us today.
Thank you so much.